Okay, we are talking to Jamie Hanshaw, and she's the author of a book called, what's the name of it?
Weird Stuff.
Weird Stuff.
Yes.
There it is. And I understand it took you, 3 years to write this?
This is only part one, so I've been working on the full, called Operation Culture Creation for about 3 years, and it was getting pretty long and lengthy, so my husband said, let's just publish the first part and see how it does, and then we'll go from there with parts 2 and 3. So right now it's part one. It was published in March, and I named it Weird Stuff because I wanted to write a book that was a tool for people to introduce their friends and loved ones and skeptics to the information without scaring them off or, beating them over the head with weird conspiracy theories. So I just wanted to make something that was colorful and bright and they could lay out, leave on their coffee table, and someone might come over and flip through it and actually might learn something, and then that would give them a gateway to open up communication about, different topics. So I just wrote a bunch of gateway conspiracies.
So is this a book about popular culture from a Christian perspective? Do you use the Bible to
Yes, I do.
discuss and comment on what's going on with the pop stars and musicians and actors and stuff?
Yeah, it's about magic and popular culture. So what I do in the first chapter is I explain what is the definition of magic, who is a magician, how does magic work, how does it happen, coming to the conclusion that we are all magicians and just working with different systems of magic by definition. So the second chapter goes into what sorcery is, what's the difference between a magician and a sorcerer. So a magician would be just concerned with himself and his own personal relationship with God, but a sorcerer would be more of a type of person who wants to create change in consciousness on a mass scale, so who would enchant many people at a time to get them to do his will. And so we go over topics like what is willpower, what's stronger than willpower is love. And so I actually kind of wrote my own system of magic because I found that studying this stuff is very ritual and ceremonial magic is very tedious and time consuming, and it can be rewarding if you're that type of person, but I'm not that disciplined. So I kind of wrote this chapter on what I call slack magic, and it's a little bit mix of Christianity, a little bit mix of Church of the Subgenius, a little bit of Taoism, but it's just a system of magic you can't really get wrong because it's just a bunch of nice principles. So that's the third chapter. Yeah. So then we kind of get into the psychology of shopping and consumer culture, and the first book poses the question: are you a child or are you a product? Are you a brand or are you a person? So we talk a lot about how Disney has taken over the corporate world and how they've aligned themselves with Apple and Marvel and Star Wars. So they're the biggest multimedia conglomerate on the planet right now.
Do you think, Jamie, there's anything wrong with parents taking their children to Disneyland? There's something that they should be concerned with there? Or is it just a fun amusement park to have fun, right?
If you really want to go down the dark rabbit hole, Disneyland is a programming center for trauma-based mind control.
Programming center. Wow, that's a good way to describe it. Yeah, I don't think I'll go there anymore after I learn a few things about Walt Disney himself.
So on the surface, they're programming your kids, to accept things like Monsanto. They had the big march on Monsanto a couple of days ago, but not a lot of people know that Disney has been in bed with Monsanto since the beginning, where they show you the plastic house, from the 60s. That they had that whole World of Tomorrow, so that was pretty much Monsanto land. So you have also sponsoring Disneyland rides. You have Siemens, which was a German company that actually started in concentration camps. So if you went to Germany and went to Auschwitz concentration camp, you would see the same Siemens logo over the gate as you would see on that big white ball in Epcot Center. Is sponsored by Siemens. So there you have Nazi connections at Disneyland. But so the next part of Weird Stuff will go very heavily into the trauma-based mind control, ritual abuse, which I think that Disneyland is a programming center for. On the surface, programming the masses, and then underground, they have contracts with the military to use the underground facilities, which if you study trauma-based mind control, you know that the military and the government is at the heart of it.
So wasn't Walt Disney a 33rd degree Mason?
No, he wasn't a Mason.
He wasn't a Mason, okay.
No, he was a nice D-Malay.
Ah.
Yeah. So he was one of the original D-Malay in Kansas City. His brother Roy was a Mason. Walt was not a Mason, but he was heavily involved in D-Malay his whole life.
What about these accusations I hear about his pedophile backgrounds and stuff, and some of the riots where they're showing Donald Duck and you know what I'm saying? I think you have a picture of that in the...
That's not at Disneyland. I just got that on the internet. I think it's a licensed product of Disney, but it's not at Disneyland.
Oh, okay, that's not at Disneyland.
No. But there are very, very many subliminal messages in Disney movies and rides like that, sexual.
That's what I've heard, yeah. So that's all true?
Yeah.
From your research? That
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, yeah, because there's a lot of controversy about these subliminal messages that are in advertisements and stuff.
Right, and I do go into subliminal messages a little bit, but...
Can you show us some pictures in here in your book? And maybe comment on a few things that parents should be aware of?
So here's the chapter on subliminal messages.
Why don't you hold your book up there and I'll just...
And I kind of give you some images, but what I'm really trying to say is that most of the time, the actual storyline of the movie is more damaging and more risque than the actual subliminal
What's this,
message.
Tangled? I'm not even...
Tangled. So this is a story about a girl who's locked up in a tower by an evil witch who is her mother and won't let her escape. Mm-hmm. And the storyline is she's actually a princess and she has to disobey her mother and leave the tower and go off with the thief to find her true parents in the city. And so it's like, what is this teaching little girls that, you know, when their mother tries to discipline them or protect them, that her mother's just an evil witch who's trying to hold her back and steal her beauty, steal her power, steal her youth. And so that's a theme that we have found in Disney movies and lots of other Hollywood movies, is that first off, they'll kill the mother. The character is many, many times an orphan, and if the mother's death isn't an integral part of the storyline, it's implied, you know, from before. And so this has to do with, in my opinion, the Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit would be a feminine aspect of God and also of motherhood. So when they kill that mother in the movie, they're actually like taking out the Holy Spirit, you know, which is one of the unpardonable sins, I think, in the Bible. So.
Well, there's certainly a lot of pagan elements in movies today. It's full of violence, sex, profanity, to where you really can't even go to a lot of the so-called PG movies anymore. I mean,
we're definitely more traumatized by a lot of cartoons than, you know, a scary movie, because we see that it's underhanded, you know, the things that they're sneaking in subliminally or just within the storyline is a lot more scary than an actual ghost movie. Or yeah, I'm more frightened by cartoons for sure.
I remember hearing years ago that some of the most violent productions are cartoons. You know, when you think about the violence in cartoons.
It's true. If you watch like the DC Comics cartoons and the Marvel Comics cartoons, like Batman cartoons, they are super violent, super dark, super... the plots are very heavy and...
it's good versus evil, though.
It is, but then a lot of times the hero does not come out on top. Like in Star Wars, the next one coming out, 6, 7, and 8, this is where Luke is going to go to the dark side.
Really?
Yeah.
So do you believe that there's like an occult message that's coming through a lot of these shows that they're trying to teach kids today?
Yes.
They're trying to program to what? Be open to the occult or what?
Well, in my opinion, I think it's all you can find in the structure of Thelema and the religion of Aleister Crowley. So he kind of set up what the 20th century was going to be. It was going to be about children witnessing all kinds of sexual acts. It was going to be about bringing about the gay agenda and the androgynous agenda also. So we just track popular culture through the filter of Thelema and OTO of Aleister Crowley, and it all, you know, fits in the program.
Now, who was Aleister Crowley?
He was a
warlock,
poet
was he?
and a writer, a magician. He was a Freemason. He was the son of a traveling preacher who turned bad because he, just totally turned his face on Christianity altogether, and he decided that he wanted to make a new religion based on the beast of Revelation.
So Aleister Crowley was brought up in a religious home.
Yeah. Plymouth Brethren.
Oh, was he? Well,
Yeah.
I didn't know that, but and he turned from it. It's interesting. Like a lot of people that became famous agnostics or atheists were once religious, you know. Charles Darwin, for example, was brought up in religious.
That can make a Satanist faster than an abusive Christian, in my opinion.
Abusive Christian.
Yeah.
Now tell me about your background. You said you were homeschooled. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I was went to school till 6th grade, and then I was homeschooled from 6 to 12. So I was pretty much self-taught and everything. Was allowed to follow any kind of studies I wanted. Was allowed to, teach myself music and theater, and basically just followed my passion. And my parents didn't really stand in the way of anything like that.
Do you feel like you got a good education, Jamie?
I do, just because I felt like I was able to study things that interested me, which led me to all this, and I had the time, and I had the freedom to explore topics without other people telling me that that's not worth my time.
And you graduated at what age? 15, wasn't it? You said you had a high school diploma at age 15. And you passed, is it like a test that you had to pass
it's
to qualify for
test out that every senior has to take in public school to get their diploma. So I just went in with the class on that day and took the test.
And what about the objection that homeschoolers are not properly socialized because they're isolated, they're not around other kids? What about that?
That's silly, because we travel around and we see so many types of kids, and we just went to Hayes, Kansas, where they were living on a farm, and they have 3 homeschool boys.
Mm-hmm.
And the homeschool boys were so much more sociable than any public school child that I had seen that year. They weren't looking in their phone. They weren't engrossed in their game. They were actually engaged with us. They were curious about us. They were asking us questions. A lot of times we just stay with the parents and the kids go in the other room, but the homeschool kids were interested in the information. They wanted to know about our life, our travels. They were much more socially adept than a public school.
That's
child.
great.
Yeah, in my opinion. And they were just homeschooled farm kids.
Yes, that's wonderful. Well,
Because, in school they try and push you into different categories, like, are you a nerd, are you a jock, are you a geek, are you whatever. And so you kind of get pigeonholed in these certain archetypes. And homeschool, you're just allowed to be whatever you are. And
why didn't your parents want to send you to public school? I mean, what?
My mother was heavily into the studies of conspiracies, I guess you would call them, back in the 90s, like FEMA camps and Bill Clinton and just whatever was happening, black helicopters at the time in the 90s. So she was always going to the school board meetings trying to keep the atheists out of the curriculum. You know how they have all the standardized testing now, and that's all part of the agenda. So she was fighting against that heavily, and then she just decided that school wasn't a place for her kids, because they were implementing all these government regulations and trying to teach sex education and trying to teach things that she wasn't.
So did you go to kindergarten in public schools? First grade, second grade?
Private school.
You went to private school your first how many years?
6th grade. Till 6th.
Till 6th grade, and then total homeschooling after that, huh? Wow, that's very interesting. All right, well, thank you very much for this time, Jamie. I'm sure this will be of interest to a lot of our viewers.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you check out the book.
Yes, there it is. What's the title again?
Weird Stuff.
Weird Stuff.
Yeah.
Operation Culture Creation #1.
Yes.
All right, and where can they get this book, by the way? How can they?
You go to freemantv.com, and you'll see a banner for Weird Stuff. Just click on that. You can order it, or you can order it through createspace.com.
All right, there we go. Thank you very much.